Welcome to the June 22nd, 2023 Helm Developer Call. All right. Do we have any announcements this week?
Not that I'm aware of.
Fine. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Discussion points. If anyone has any discussion points, they can drop them into the document. I'll go ahead and drop it into chat here. I'll kick it off with one. So I started digging into some issues, and let's see if I've got them here in my notes. Like, issues I started digging into were 27 and these two issues. And in general, there's long been complaints about import values. And I have found they are totally inconsistent and quite often broken, the import value system. There was an issue of somebody wanting to be able to use set null to override values. And in some cases, they just don't work. So in implementing that, I started to discover that the import value system was really messed up. Like, there are inconsistencies. So you can import values using a parent child, or you can just give it a string and it finds it in the exports field and pulls it in. While it actually behaves differently in how it coalesces things between those. So if you use one way, it does it one way. If you do it the other way, it does something else and handles which one, whether it overrides the parent or not. It was just totally inconsistent. I went and chased down Matt Butcher to go figure out, how is this supposed to be? What was it originally built to do before bug fixes and little changes over the years started messing with things? And what he had to say was, it is ultimately the command line first, what a user specifies at the command line is tops. Then it's the imported values that you specify, right? If you choose to import a value, that value's next. Then it's a parent value, then it's a child value, right? In a parent-child chart relationship. And I found a lot of lack of testing. I found tests that did the functionality, but they actually did what the functionality did rather than the intent. And so they'll say it was supposed to be overridden and then use the non-overridden value to check for, because the test is wrong. And it's been that way for years, but it's also inconsistent, because sometimes in some configurations, you'll get it, and other times in other configurations, you'll get it the other way. It's really quite ugly getting into that code. And there was very few tests. So I've been working on that, trying to make it consistent and tested. I don't know how many people it'll anger, because no matter what, you're going to break something, but we've got tons of bugs in the backlog and a lot of inconsistent behavior. And over the last couple of years, we've introduced some bugs there. So that's what I have been working on, and it is quite a mess. So Scott, you got your hand up so politely.
Yeah, I'm really glad, Matt. There may be, okay, so I noticed a while back, there were, back before we consolidated the documentation on helm.sh, there were a couple of references to deep merging. And this was one of my biggest questions when I first started getting involved in Helm, like way back in the day. My understanding from then, even though now I'm looking for it, I actually don't really see in the docs for the values files or whatever what the actual intent is in terms of like how it's merged, but the way I have always thought it should work and was able to verify, at least at some point in the past it worked, was when you're specifying the command line, that the order in which you set values files or use --set, explicitly in a command, that order would be the order at which the rightmost value would take precedence. So that deep merging would, that would actually also not only override, but also affect the deep merge. And the deep merge was supposed to do everything, including objects, maps, And if you specify an array key, like an actual numeric value, also arrays, or strings or numbers or any other types. And that was basically it, but I don't see it documented anywhere. And I wonder if that's part of the problem, that we don't have a definite set of intents. So that's the one part. Second,
that is one thing I have not looked into as part of this. I've really been looking into the import values things in dependencies, because somebody noticed if I put a dependency into the charts folder and I don't put it on the dependencies list, then the way the values are treated, the coalesced values that get calculated across everything, is different than if I put it into the dependencies list. Something different happens. And then import values, I went down that rabbit hole because in trying to fix that problem, my test started failing around import values, and then I had to go figure out why are the import values tests failing. Oh, that's just broken too. And that's when I went to go start figuring out the order, because import values is not working as expected.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because in different cases,
import values.
I'm talking import values as specified in the dependencies list in the chart YAML file. That little used thing has all kinds of edge cases that, and maintaining backwards can,
Got it.
I do kind of agree with what Scott said, though. In general, like it's not entirely clear to users, I think, from the number of questions we get around how values merging works, like what the actual like intended behavior is, and then people kind of guess and make it work, and then like, well, I got it working, let's not touch this. I don't know. I do think it would be useful to fully prescribe what the intended behavior is, and then then we can
I had to go chase it down. Chase down Matt Butcher to go figure out what is that intended behavior, because I couldn't find it documented anywhere, and I wasn't around, or I wasn't paying attention when that was written. I was around, I just wasn't paying attention when that particular area was written. And so what is that? And the order, I don't know if you're here, is going to be user specified at the CLI with the user specifies, followed by imported values, because you chose to import them, followed by what was in the parent, and then what was in the child, right? And that's the
you mean in terms of like which takes precedence first, like the imported
values? So if I've imported and I've done all these other things, but I specify it at the command line, that's going to take precedent. And if I've got, say, a child chart and a parent chart, and the parent chart specifies a value, but in imported values, I also said import it from the child chart, which one takes precedent? The parents or the imported value, because I set both, right? The imported value takes precedence over what I specified in the parent. The parent should be overridden, right? Then it comes to the parent value. Then if there's a matching child value, that'll work if there's no parent. And we had no tests around this that I could find.
I think you're right. We have a hooks life cycle, right? With the order of hooks. You don't have an order specified in documentation where imported values come into that. Everything else,
even the value precedence, right? Even the value precedence, you have to start to assume things. And they brought up at the command line, if I set more than one file, or to import from, what's the order of precedence for those files? We don't document that anywhere either. And so
I thought it was the order specified on the command line or in the same,
but it's not documented anywhere.
I see,
right? We don't actually say, so users have to reverse engineer it because we don't tell them. And so they've got to go figure it out. And the import values just worked inconsistently.
You're right.
Like there's a case where so there's one things where in import values, you can just specify a string to the section in the export section, or you can specify a parent-child relationship. If I've got two things and I put the string first and I put a parent-child next, it will behave differently than if I reverse the order and put the parent-child one first and the string second. It actually behaves differently today, and you're going to have different things happening. You'll have different overrides, that's one of our problems today. Even if the values don't overlap each other, they will behave differently. Right? And I think I've got most of it fixed, but somehow randomly one of my fixes caused the linter to explode. And that's because copy structure out of Mitchell, right over at HashiCorp, somehow I've put that into an infinite loop. only inside of linting tests. So I've got to go track that down. And I have no idea how I pulled that off, but that's where I'm at now is testing. There will be a very long pull request coming up, probably in the next week, that will have my go at fixing this up, and I'll try to explain things really well in it, including order of priority. And it's really large, mostly because I've added so many tests. Because this area was very much untested, and over time we've made little changes, and those little changes have actually broken some behavior and changed some behavior, and this tries to get it right and consistent, because there's some things now that broke in the last year, right, in the last year or so, and that worked for the previous 6 years before that. And so fixing some of those things, and we've had a number of bugs on this filed. A number of them have been closed just to inactivity by the bot. And so this is hopefully fixing up a bunch of it, but I will need eyes on it, testing it, looking at it, those kinds of things. Scott, you've still got your hand raised.
Yeah, that's still relevant. I just tried to type so you could continue talking, but basically I agree with what you said, needing to document it. It seems pretty obvious now, and I didn't realize there was an issue with some of those cases that you mentioned, because I don't use them. Yes, I haven't seen that. But except for one thing, the null values, which I want to address. But basically, just a request is if you wouldn't mind explicitly pinging me once that PR is up, because I will definitely thoroughly test that. The values merging and the deep merging was one of the first things that I really dug into when I got to Helm, because I needed it for a project and I was considering using Helm's libraries to do it. So that was when I was at NBC Universal. So that for like their ad stuff. So that was why that was like an interest of mine. Also about the null values, I initially added that functionality. That was the first contribution I made to the Helm binary. So that has worked and not worked at different points through the years because of all the different changes. So I would like to help somehow with that.
Oh yeah, well, okay. So on the one hand, we know how to prevent.
There's one other thing I'd like to mention, which, if it comes to documenting the actual, I noticed in the code, the values merge for command line arguments is a different process to values merge for chart to, like your once you've merged your command line arguments, merging into your charts values. I don't know if someone wants to look at that. There's an entirely different set of merge code for command line arguments.
Yeah, and I think part of that is looking at the two and seeing how they go. I know we functionally have to do it separately, because if you use the stuff as an SDK, there is no command line, you'll pass in values differently. So functionally we need to keep those separate for handling. But as far as how merging happens, that is something to also look at. Right now I'm just trying to clean up, fix a bug where we have inconsistent using null to remove something, right? You can set null to remove a value that's already there at a higher level specification in the order of priorities. The problem is that works inconsistently depending on certain things. And so I'm trying to fix the bug to make it consistently work, and then fix import values. Those are my major things right now, and make import values work properly again with the priorities that are supposed to be there. It looks like some things haven't been consistent in the 6 years. So that's one of the things we'll probably need to talk about once I have the pull request there, is that things have been inconsistent since Helm 2. So do we leave them inconsistent, or do we fix that inconsistency?
I think we should fix it.
Right.
We have it documented in the page that I've just linked for the values files. We imported all of those docs from Helm 2 into this website, or into this format. And it should be, I don't know why this got removed, but I know the documentation used to make it clear to everyone that it just follows the YAML stack, where anything that resolves to a null, tilde, null, all caps, low caps, and so on. So we should make that clear too.
Yeah, and that behavior was inconsistent. So that's an easy one to fix. It's the import values is the real problem. The null value one here, I've got that easily fixed. It's the
Okay.
import values part that's different because it was just weirdly broken. And it's been broken that way for a very long time, like years and years, some of it. And so do we leave it broken or do we fix it? Because it's inconsistent. So with the named, it does it one way. With the string, it does it in a different way. And then depending on how you order name and stringed, it can give you one or the other behaviors, and priorities are weird depending on how you order things. And you've got to kind of magically reverse engineer it to figure it out.
Wow. So I just wanted to pinpoint or underscore that the that null is supposed to delete the key itself because there was previously no way to do it. And there's also an issue where we debated this like a few years ago about removing that functionality because of some of these things where someone wants a null as a value, and then using like an actual command to remove a key, something like that. But then that never got resolved because we never.
So does null supposed to delete the key altogether?
Correct. And the reason for that was there's a really simple use case. Let's say ingress handlers or whatever, ingress controllers. If you they're specified as objects, and so this happened all the time with Helm charts when you were deploying like WordPress or something or Drupal. Someone would specify a different ingress type object, and it would just blow up because the kube API doesn't allow you to have even a blank key that's incompatible with one of the other top level keys. So we had to be able to give people a way to remove certain keys.
So if it's null, it needs to be deleted. There's a test where we expect a null and we give an error based on it being a null. It's an old test. But there's actually a test where we're expecting a null in a certain situation to still exist. And one of the pull requests that came in to fix some of this stuff up changed that test because it didn't think a null should be there. And I was looking at whether that test needed to be changed to my stuff because it's throwing an error too, because the nulls are all gone.
Yeah, that's probably why. And also another example is storage class. That happens a lot too, because if you want to change a storage class, which a lot of people do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll look into that test as well and leave a comment around it if I have to change it.
And at least that one's documented in the link that I just, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm fixing those. Yeah, it's a lot of tests though are coming in to test all these various situations, which will hopefully catch things in the future because we had broken things over time. So I spent more time on Helm in the last week than I have in the last month in the code. All right. That's all I had to talk about. I wanted to bring folks up to speed on that and get some input. I will ping everybody about it when it's up for review. Do we have anything else we wanted to talk about?
Oh, yeah.
There's some PRs that I raised a few weeks ago, which I think I didn't get a chance to look before the meeting. I can stick them in the Helm Dev channel if I think they're good for a review. I'll just bring them up next week. Whatever's easiest. I forgot to go back and look to see if they were good for review.
Yeah, some of them I took a look at. I don't remember what did I do with those. Let me pull them up.
I think from June the 8th. There's like a list of. Maybe a quick discussion is worthwhile. Was one of the PRs often noticed that when you say do the install API call, the go routine which is used to execute the install just continues to run in the background if your context times out. I think this would be surprising from a API usage behavior.
The pull request for that didn't actually change that behavior. And that was my issue with the pull request for it, is when the context times out, the parent function still returns, but that go routine keeps running to close of execution, which I had commented on the pull request. Throughout, we actually have to pass it into where we're performing the context, if we don't already. And we need to periodically check to see if it's done and then return if it's done and exit out of there, gracefully handle it if the context has been canceled. And we don't do that. And I pointed that out on the issue. I haven't checked back to see whether we made the change. It was one of those things that I was going to go tackle if nobody else did, because that impacts us where I'm at.
I would argue that for this PR, it's not trying to fix that bug. They just noticed that this was a bug. This PR fixes a different bug, which I'm trying to remember the details.
What was the other bug? Because that was the.
So there is another leak, if I remember. Let me find the exact.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do remember now. So when
Oh yes, I do. Yes, because we can have it hanging there, a leak hanging. Yeah.
so
And it still leaves that one go routine running in the background, but it stops that leak where another one gets caught up.
right.
Yeah, we can probably get that into 3.12.2.
Yeah, I think it's worth merging this PR. I mean, obviously any other review pending, but and then maybe I'm just thinking I can take on making a PR for fixing the actual leak of the cancellation of the upgrade and install. That's a different issue.
Yeah, let's get this. We need another maintainer besides myself to look at it. Scott, can you look at 12,088?
Oh yeah, that's that. Yeah, I just put that in the doc. So that's what I thought you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
I
look at
will.
that. That's right.
And also, I mentioned this not long ago, but Hida Badels who is one of the Flux maintainers is really interested in. He doesn't have all the time in the world, but when we were asking folks about helping to review PRs, things that relate to the SDK, and especially things that relate to stuff like Go routines in the client, like those are critical. He would definitely like to review those. So I just reached out to him too, and not to stop us in any way or hold the works, but just to get another set of eyes on that, because he's been doing. The reason I'm saying that is because he's been doing tons and tons of work with Helm's SDK for other projects.
Yeah, no, good. So let's if he reviews it, that would be great. I will try to do that as well in the next week or so. I do have it up on my list of things to review because I'd like to get that into 3.12.2, and so it's set in that milestone, so it is on there. I just got caught up in something else first. But yeah, I can go review some of these. I'll probably do it after I finish this, but I do have them. I have them open and I have it in front of me. I haven't forgotten. Okay. Do we have anything else?
Maybe for next week, since we're low on time. I was curious about server-side apply in Helm's three-way merge, but I think for next week. But I'll bring it up now in case someone wants to think about it until for next week.
Yeah, we can talk about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Sorry, I interrupted someone.
I was wondering, I may have missed it, but did you cover the one that I put into the Keybase chat from the community member that came last week? And then I wanted to check on Michael's. You may have already done those as well in the last 3 minutes.
Over there. I have not looked at that when you dropped into Keybase chat. So
There is a breaking change, so it'd be good to know whether kind of which direction, but if you have a chance to just look at it briefly, that would be good.
okay. There's a breaking change to the winter.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll take a look at it.
Thank you. And then I had, it's never too early because we're gonna have to figure it out anyway, but the maintainer talk, I thought it would be good if some of the new maintainers could speak, like maybe George, if you're gonna go to Chicago.
What?
Uh,
Yeah, let's talk about, when is the maintainer talk due? Do you know?
I don't, but I can ping Karen in the chat.
Okay.
So that
I
was
should, yeah, 99% be at Chicago. So
Yeah.
I can think about talking at least. Technically, I'm not a maintainer, but happy to talk.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Anything else? Who will be here next week? I should be here next week. I can moderate again. I'll volunteer.
We'll be in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
Nice.
Also planning to be in Chicago, so if I can play a supporting role in whoever else wants to speak, and helping with slides and whatever else needs to happen,
Yeah.
count me in.
I'll be in Chicago too. Hopefully we'll have a whole crew.
I'll be in Chicago.
Oh, nice.
Maybe,
All right.
maybe we should organize a little Helm get together then in Chicago. It seems like an awful lot of us are gonna be there, so.
We should. As we get closer, let's talk about it. Figure
Absolutely.
something out.
Awesome. I can help with PR review and triage for the list of.
Thank you.
May or may not be here next week. I can sign up for notes, but again, I might take the day off. So
Okay. Well, see how things go.
cool.
All right,
All right.
folks. With that, have a wonderful week. See you online.
Thank you.